In this demo, we will demonstrate how you can fast-track your API development with IBM Bob and IBM API Connect MCP Server. We will use IBM Bob to generate enterprise-grade OpenAPI specifications, validating them against OWASP security standards, creating backend implementations from the API definitions, and deploying and testing them on IBM Cloud Code Engine. It also highlights using an API Connect MCP server integrated with Bob to manage API Connect projects, deploy APIs within the API Connect platform. Prompt Bob to generate an enterprise-grade OpenAPI 3.0 YAML for a customer CRUD REST API, with request-response examples, schema validations, regex rules, and nullable field handling. Bob will generate the API specification YAML. Let us now review the generated API spec. Bob has added the rate limit, bearer token for authentication and security, and health check endpoint. Regular expressions, length validation, null validations have been added for the schema validation, based on the kind of fields. All the CRUD operations have been generated, with request and response validation, along with success and failure response codes. We have successfully generated customers' OpenAPI spec. Let us now validate the generated API spec against the OWASP security standard. OWASP is a globally recognized security standard and community that helps organizations build secure web applications and APIs. It helps developers and API teams implement best practices like input validation, authentication, authorization, encryption, rate limiting, and secure coding to protect applications from cyber threats and compliance risks. It is widely used in API governance, DevSecOps, API Connect, and enterprise security reviews. The API security assessment achieved a score of 7.5 out of 10, with strong authentication, rate limiting, input validation, and error handling already in place. However, key OWASP security gaps were identified, including missing object-level authorization, lack of role-based access control, and incomplete security configurations such as headers, cores, and encryption standards. The report recommends implementing audit logging, field-level encryption, and stronger API security controls to align with OWASP Top 10 standards and improve overall enterprise security posture. Next, we will generate the backend implementation of the API using Bob and also scripts to deploy the generated application to Code Engine. Let's ask Bob to generate fast API backend for the API using mock data and deploy to Code Engine. Bob reads the API specification and creates a to-do list to create a new fast API project. Implement API endpoints with mock data and also generate the deployment script to deploy application to Code Engine. backend application code is now ready to deploy to Code Engine. Let's use the deployment script created by Bob to deploy the generated application to Code Engine. Application is now deployed to Code Engine. Let's test to ensure all the endpoints are working as expected. Let's test the input validation we defined in the API spec are working as expected with Create Customer Endpoint. You can see the response code 422 as the input format is not valid. Since the backend is now ready, let's use Bob to update the API spec to use this backend. API is now ready to deploy to API Connect. We will use an API Connect MCP Server integrated with Bob to manage API Connect projects, deploy APIs, and test them within the API Connect platform. Using the tools for API Connect Management System, we can list the available projects in API Connect, create new project and also deploy API into it. API has now been successfully deployed to the project. Let's verify the specifications and ensure endpoints are working fine. This demo showcased an end-to-end API lifecycle automation workflow using Bob. It covered generating an enterprise-grade OpenAPI specification, validating it against OWASP security standards, automatically generating and deploying the backend implementation on IBM Cloud Code Engine. The demo also highlighted the integration of API Connect MCP Server with Bob to streamline API management activities such as listing projects, creating and deploying APIs, and testing APIs directly within API Connect. Overall, the solution demonstrated how AI-driven automation can accelerate secure API development, deployment, governance, and testing in an enterprise environment. Thank you for watching.